Hi, my presentation will be on James, otherwise known as Jim Schoppert, and how he innovated Alaskan Native art. First, let's talk a little bit about what traditional or formline art actually is. Formline art typically consists of what are called ovoids and U-shapes, ovoids being essentially rectangles with rounded corners, and U-shapes, as the name suggests, on the shape of the letter U. However, they tend to have sharper, more defined corners than ovoids, but these corners are not perpendicular. These shapes are very often used to make images of animals, such as the one depicted below, either aquatic or those that reside on land. So birds, quadrupeds like bears and whales are very common. Sometimes you'll see fish and frogs, but you almost, I'm not going to say never, I just haven't seen it, but you almost never see humans or humanoid figures depicted in these types of works. A little more about formline. Formline has little variation in the techniques that practitioners can deploy to express themselves artistically. As is demonstrated in the image to the right, there are generally three major elements other than the ones that we just talked about that define formline. Primary formlines that lay the groundwork for the smaller details, secondary formlines that complement the primary, and sub-secondary and tertiary formlines, which are essentially just the smaller details to fill the gaps between the framework of the primary and secondary lines. So while the products of formline art can be vastly different, like I was saying before, bears, birds, whales, frogs, amphibians, whatever, you'll see almost no variation in the principles that artists can use that are commonly seen in other art styles. We're going to talk a little more about formline. As such, formline is incredibly recognizable, being almost exclusive to the Northwest coast. But as a consequence, it is rather predictable, and having one piece of art in this style generally speaks to the rest of the work outlined in such a way. As well, it is restrictive in the sense that it is almost exclusively used to depict the animals or images of religious significance. Animals, like I was saying before, haven't mentioned religious significance until now, but this can be seen in the image to the right. Let you eyeball that one for a minute. Now let's talk about Jim Schoppert's take on formline art. The quote below, as said originally by Schoppert himself, reads, "There is tremendous pressure for conformity from the collectors and scholars who want work that fits into the classic definition of Northwest Indian art. When things don't fit their expectations, there's a raised eyebrow and a sort of suggestion of what do we do with it now?" I believe that his wood carving Stillwater, represented below, shows his response to this conformist attitude, using traditional formline shapes, such as the whale tail and I believe that's a fish fin to the right, with completely unfamiliar swaths of paint across unevenly measured wood panels. Typically in formline you'll see, especially with wood carvings, evenly measured wood panels. There's a lot of symmetry, but with a lot of Schoppert's work you'll see like uneven wood panels, different cutouts. There's a lot more depth to them. And the name Stillwater is basically a play on the fact that while he has brought a new understanding to the art form, it is still rooted in tradition. Sorry about that. To continue, Schoppert's art style, other than borrowing images and shapes from traditional formline, could almost be interpreted as a slap in the face of Alaskan Native art, with bright colors such as cyan, orange, and purple, as depicted in the image to the right, to unorthodox, abstract, or a combination of both in the templates he chose to use in his work. This assessment, however, I think is incorrect. The wood carving blueberries, again on the right, seems to represent the beauty of all elements of formline, by presenting them as a mosaic of what the culture stands for. Rather than the slap in the face, I think Schoppert gave the art style a little more of a kiss on the cheek. A little more on his take. Schoppert believed that by reimagining formline, he and other Alaskan Native artists would be able to keep the appeal and interest in the culture alive, to keep up with the times of an increasingly modern world, He also believed that it was something of a responsibility to maintain the legacy of our ancestors through their art. Again, a little more of an example of his unorthodox methods seen in Raven Opens a Box of Stars. You would almost never see this salmon red pinkish color in traditional art. You usually see colors like black, dark green, dark red, maybe dark blue, but it's almost exclusively dark colors. And with that, we'll go on to the next slide. These beliefs are represented through both his work and statements he's made, as Schoppert is quoted as saying, "The exquisite work of our ancestors teaches us to create works suited for the day in which we live. By taking the old, breathing new life into it, and developing a new creation, the spirit of our people lives." And, "If art has a master, imagination cracks the whip. Learn the rules, then break them. We cannot return to the old ways, but we must reflect them in our attitudes and in our art." In conclusion, through a mixture of unorthodox practices and a visionary mindset with regards to Alaskan Native culture and how it is artistically expressed, Schoppert pioneered a new attitude towards what Native art can look like and signify, as well as opened the art form to modern artists who share the sentiments of Native beliefs and want to expand on them through their own interpretation. His work can be found all over Alaska, including on the campus of UAA, all the way to Seattle's airport. Aside from wood carving, he was also an avid poet who went on to publish several books, such as Instrument of Change, Jim Schoppert, 1947 to 1992, and Portfolio, 11 American Indian Artists. In addition, he also taught at UAF as an assistant professor of visual arts from 1981 to 1987, later becoming a visiting professor. Here is my works cited page. Thank you for listening.